So I think it is very obvious to say that at the time of making this video, the Richmond Football Club have had a way better start than what everyone thought they were going to have in 2025. Again, not only is the start way better, but it has legitimately exceeded expectations by like 100% to what people genuinely thought they were going to do. Again, you had AFL experts and critics out there who were saying that the Tigers weren't going to win a game, and you had other guys out there like Kane Corns who were basically saying that Richmond had the worst ever list that he has ever seen since GWS and Gold Coast, and obviously critics saying that it is one of the worst lists in AFL history that is not a foundation team. Again, this was the average consensus by a lot of people that not only did Richmond have a terrible team, but they just were going to be one of the first ever teams in like AFL history to go through an entire year and not win a game. Again, not only has that been completely proven false by the Tigers literally winning their first game against Carlton, but as we know, their football over the last couple of weeks has been pretty good, even going as far as beating the Gold Coast Suns, who, again, some people have Gold Coast as not only a legitimate top 8 contender, but a team that a lot of people thought could have actually made the top 4 if everything went right for them. Again, I think this has not only been a massive shock to all the experts, commentary, and critics out there, but also a massive shock to, I think, those at Richmond who knew that they probably cooked with the young core they of course drafted, but they didn't know they cooked this hard, to the point where the rebuild is already being praised by many critics as something that other teams might actually try and copy, and it's already going to be a blueprint to what the future of rebuilding in the AFL legitimately looks like. Again, don't get me wrong, it is only early, but we got to remember this team was not tipped to win any games at all by a lot of people, and they've already won, a couple of games in the first 6 games of the season, which just no one thought they were going to, really do. So you've got people like me who have been making a ton of videos talking about how Richmond's future is going to go, how the Tigers are going to look at the 2025 AFL draft and trade period, and of course myself and other, I guess analysts out there, YouTubers, whatever you want to call them, kind of predicting what the Tigers are going to do. All of a sudden, not only are we kind of, I think, all changing our thoughts and opinions on how the off-season is going to go, but you've of course got Richmond who are not only thinking, hold on a second, we probably all thought we were going to have pick 1 here, but it turns out we're going to have 4 and 5. But also, we got to look at the ripple effect now of North Melbourne, who, yes, it is still very early on the season, but they definitely don't look like they're going to be pushing for the 8 or having a massive jump like they predicted and like some of the experts predicted. Again, why this is important is because Richmond own their, of course, first round pick. So I think I'm going to assume, like a lot of people have assumed, that Richmond probably went into this, going into this 2025 off-season thinking, look, we're probably going to have pick 1. We might have North Melbourne's pick 6. But it's going to be very much a struggle for us to go out and convince bigger name free agents to come to our team due to the fact that it looks like it could be a 5-year rebuild. But instead now, I think the plan and mindset of Richmond is going to completely shift, because not only does it look like they're not going to have pick 1 and pick 2, especially if Oscar Allen leaves, given West Coast that pick, and meaning that they could legitimately have pick 4 and 5 by the time the draft comes around, but they're probably sitting there thinking, holy crap, we have a chance now to talk to some of these free agents and think, well, our plans are changing here. We are now not a team who is going to be struggling and finishing last for the next 5 years like some people tipped us to be, but we're more so a team now who is probably going to have still 2 top 5 picks, but I think it is putting together a rebuild that is very much exceeding expectations, but obviously exceeding the time of how people thought it was going to, take them to maybe push for the 8 in the near future, which is going to dramatically, I think, go on other players' minds who maybe weren't looking at Richmond as a free agent option, that now sitting there thinking, holy crap, I think the Tigers could actually be a very nice option to go to in the off-season. And why I'm mentioning that is because, as we know, Richmond have a ton of cap space in 2025. They will arguably have some of the most salary cap that we have ever seen, with them not having to pay Dustin Martin anymore, who was the highest paid player in the game. Tom Lynch's deal ends this year, and he's the highest paid player in the game at the moment. They're not paying Shea Bolton anymore, who was on about $1.1 million. Amongst a bunch of other players, they legitimately will have a ton of salary cap that they're going to have to use by the end of 2025 per the AFL rules. But obviously it was going to be a hard thing for them to do, considering they would probably think it was going to be hard to attract free agents if they were going to be a dead last team. And other than money, they didn't necessarily have anything to pitch them. Again, we all knew that their future was going to be really bright and look very good, but that is really hard to pitch someone that not only is the money and future going to be good, if that player might not necessarily believe in that, and they have other options where the future could legitimately look a little bit better. But that's not the case anymore. I mean, Richmond's future just looks great, and this is a proven fact now with them already getting a couple of wins, and one of which being against a really good side in the Gold Coast Suns. I think this is going to be another drawing, board that they can add to what they're going to pitch AFL players this upcoming off-season. Again, they're not just going to be pitching the money, but they're going to be pitching what the future is going to be looking like when they're projecting they're going to make the 8, push for finals, and, of course, persuading these players on the opportunity, what it's going to look like to come to the Richmond Football Club. Some of these players I've already mentioned on the channel before. Again, Zach Butters is not a free agent just yet, but I definitely feel like Richmond might go into this off-season with a big pitch to try and get him. Again, we've obviously heard of Matt Rowell as well, considering Adam Uze and his coaching right now wants to establish a really nice inside contested clearance midfield by having Tim Taranto, Smiley, Hopper, and Lawler in there. I think he's probably going to pitch that to Matt Rowell as well, saying that this is how we think the future is going to be for this club. Adam Uze, won a premiership as the assistant coach of a team that had a very big contested clearance-based football midfield in the Melbourne Demons. We are casually trying to recreate that here at Richmond with Taranto, Hopper, of course, them just drafting Smiley, Lawler coming in there as well. I think that will be something that they're going to pitch to maybe even Matt Rowell, whether we agree with it or not as fans, whether we want more speed or not. I think it's a player they're going to target, and Zach Butters is going to be the other one. Ed Richards is another guy who is a little bit different because he's more of a ball user and a defensive type of midfielder. Maybe Richmond are potentially looking at, that type of player as well. Again, I'm sure there's going to be countless other players that the Tigers going to look at. Type of role players like Pat Lipinski that, the Collingwood Football Club have recently got over the last couple of years. Again, I think Richmond are going to go in that direction with this free agency, and it's going to be much different now because not only have I mentioned that their draft plans may be changing, but I think the free agency plans are very much changing as well, as Richmond are going to be way more confident going in and talking to players, knowing that the future and the examples that they were probably going to be telling them are literally being put as a demonstration on the field right now with the Tigers beating Carlton and Gold Coast. So I think it's going to be a really interesting thing with how the Tigers approach free agency. I think those plans will completely change now. I wouldn't even be surprised if they're much more aggressive. Again, they do have to calm down though and realize they can't rush the rebuild. Like, it'd be awesome if they brought in a couple of really quality players, but you don't want to bring in older players who don't really fit with the time slot and time age of what the team is currently at right now. It's going to be very young, and you don't want to add some 28-year-old to that most likely. So I think that's another thing Richmond will go into. But yeah, the draft. The draft is a way different thing. Because as I said, they were probably looking at pick 1 and probably something like pick 6 and 7. Now they're going to have 2 picks like in the middle of that, most likely at like pick 3 to pick number 5, with not only their own pick, but North Melbourne's pick. So it's going to be interesting to see how they approach the draft now. Again, it's obviously going to be probably best available and all of that, but there's going to be a player or two that they're probably going to be thinking now that we can't get because we won't have one, most likely, as it seems at the time of making this video. But also players that they can maybe get that are a little bit better than what they originally had at that pick 6 to 7 mark from North's pick, because they might legitimately have that at like pick 3 or 4. So there's a lot of different things that are changing right now for Richmond. The off-season plans are completely changing. Again, as the season goes and unfolds and defies the expectations and predictions that people had for them. Again, I'm very interested to hear all of your thoughts and opinions on this in the comments section down below. How do you guys think Richmond should approach free agency and, of course, their, draft that's coming up in 5-6 months or so? Again, I'd very much like to hear your thoughts and opinions. Subscribe to the channel for the latest AFL content and AFL news. Comment down below. Subscribe to my gaming channel, which will also be getting linked in the description down below as well. And I guess I'll be seeing you guys next time. Goodbye.